see and hear what's going on. So yeah, if you don't consent to being filmed and broadcast, now is the time to leave. All right. Other than that, there wasn't anything else I wanted to say. So if you're happy, then we'll go straight into the agenda. If you want to speak at any time, I've probably only got about 9 people I think I can see on the screen. So if you use the raised hand facility at the top on the toolbar, hopefully I can see people there. But if you miss my attention, just shout, turn your microphone on and shout, and I can invite you to speak. Then is that okay?
Yeah,
that's fine.
Okay. Well, it's been so long since last time. We haven't bothered with the minutes or any matters arising because I don't think anyone will remember that far back. So I think we'll start with a clean slate. In terms of the agenda, the first item was just a general discussion that I wanted to open, really, in terms of the Local Government and Elections Wales Act, because I know it's something that's top of our agenda for the time being in terms of preparation between now and next May in terms of the legislation. And I just wanted to make sure it was, on the agenda for community councils, and you were aware of what's in there and how prepared you were. Are you all sort of familiar with what's in the legislation and how it will impact on community councils? Looking quite blank.
I think
I've read it.
Well, I was going to say, I know that there's going to be some sort of boundary changes, and I know that's going to affect some of the communities.
The council has undertaken an electoral review from the Boundary Commission. You'll have probably seen the report that was published last year.
Yeah. I've seen it.
The order hasn't been made yet by Welsh Government, but that will change some of the ward boundaries for the next principal council elections. And actually, our council numbers go up from 50 to 51.
Oh.
Rogerstone is affected, as is a bit of Graig, I think. Paul goes into Rogerstone, so I think there'll be issues there in terms of the impact for Rogerstone Community Council. But I don't think there are too many other ward boundary changes that would impact on community councils. I stand to be corrected on that one, but I think in terms of boundary changes, the main impact is in Rogerstone and Graig.
Doesn't it mean, Gareth, that Rogerstone have another 3 city councillors?
Rogerstone will have 4 in total.
4.
Yeah,
Right.
but Rogerstone will be warded itself.
Yes, I understand.
So instead of the whole of Rogerstone having 3 councillors at the moment, because of the increased housing supply in Rogerstone and increased population, it will have 4 councillors.
Right.
But Rogerstone will be split into 3 different wards.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that will have a difference then in terms of how those wards are represented. But you're right, in numbers wise, it goes up from 3 councillors to 4 councillors.
And regarding the community council, I think it's a good move, really, because Graig seems quite isolated geographically from Rogerstone anyway.
Yeah, I think they were looking to rearrange the boundary on community lines anyway, and I think there was an obvious sort of boundary distinction there in terms of that part of Graig that was going in with, is it Rogerstone North? I can't remember now.
I think it's Rogerstone West, if I remember correctly.
So yes, I think in terms of the natural sort of geographical community boundaries, that was a more obvious change, and I don't think it will have that much of an impact in terms of numbers. Certainly in terms of the Graig ward, then on the city council, still 2 councillors there, so there's no loss of representation in the Graig ward. But like I said, that review of the city council was undertaken last year. Boundary Commissioners published this report, but obviously the new ministers in the Senedd following the elections have got to make the necessary orders now sometime, between now and next May, ready for the elections.
I think they've got to give a couple of months' notice, if I remember correctly.
Oh, I'm sure they'll make the order as soon as they get round to it in terms of their legislative programme, and I don't imagine there'll be anything contentious in the Newport proposals. Lots of other councils lost or a number of seats. I mean, they went down significantly in terms of representation and numbers of councillors. Torfaen and Blaenau Gwent in particular. So I think those proposals were more controversial than ours. As I said, in the end, they accepted Newport was a growing city, and therefore there was a need to increase membership overall, and then just tweak the ward boundaries just to make sure there was more balance in terms of the numbers of councillors per people on the electoral roll. So yeah, a boundary commission wise, I don't think there'll be a major impact on most community councils. Was the Liswerry boundary changed? Like, I know Marshfield, the Marshfield ward was changing.
Yeah, the Wentlug ward has changed because it takes into account Dufferin now. We're now that we would come under what's going to be known as Tredegar Park.
Yeah, but I think I think they didn't change the communities within those wards.
No,
they may have changed. Yeah, so you may have moved into a different sort of city council electoral ward, but the communities were still there, so they didn't change community boundaries.
No.
So that's what I mean. It won't have much of an impact, other than the fact you'll be in a different electoral ward for the city council elections. So so nothing much changes on that one. So I'm going through my list now in terms of things that were in the legislation. The eligible community councils can apply to Welsh Government for what they call this general power of competence now. I'm not sure how much interest that will be for community councils. It's certainly had a mixed response in terms with local government lawyers for principal councils. I'm not sure how widely this power is going to be used, but it's there in case any councils feel that they're eligible and want to use it. So that was one thing. I suppose the biggest thing for me when I was reading through the legislation in terms of community councils was access to your meetings.
Yeah.
The requirements for remote meetings will continue. The obligations on community councils are not as onerous as the city council, because we've also got to broadcast our meetings, which gives rise to certain technology problems. I think the only requirement for community councils is that your members can actually dial in and just be heard. They don't have to be seen, and your meetings don't have to be broadcast. But there is a requirement, and it all comes back to this diversity agenda with Welsh Government encouraging more people to become councillors, community councils and principal councillors, so that if it's difficult for them to travel to a particular venue, they can dial in remotely. So that's something that you'll need to be aware of as from next May. And there is a requirement in the legislation for you to give reasonable access for public participation in your meetings.
Yeah.
Now I know some community councils allow public speaking in their meetings already. So it's just something as from next April, May that the other councils might need to be aware of. We're still awaiting guidance on that from Welsh Government as to what the requirement would be, and I think there'll be a certain amount of flexibility in terms of how and when you allow the public to participate in your meetings. But it's something that you will need to consider as a community council between now and next April, May.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, stop me if you've got any questions.
No,
this list of things.
Yeah,
we'll have questions at the end, shall we? So that was meetings.
Sorry, I've got a question. I put my hand up. You haven't spotted me. It's going to prevent us meeting in our village hall at the moment. I know we can't at the moment because we can't give remote access to anybody who requires it. They can come to the village hall and participate once once we were able to do that. But at the moment we can't. We haven't got the IT infrastructure in our village hall to be able to give any remote. So we're really going to have to.
Well, again,
video forever.
That's okay. No, it actually doesn't say the need for remote attendance, or the requirement is for community councillors to be able to dial in remotely. Now, at the moment, we've got remote meetings because of coronavirus and social distancing and so on. But imagine that doesn't apply anymore, and you can have any number of people in your hall as you want. Then it would be sufficient if the public were allowed to come into the hall physically and participate there. Okay.
I think, Gareth, there'd be a number of us smaller councils that, because there's no internet access within the village halls, they would struggle on the remote aspect of the meetings.
Yeah, which is why, like I said, the requirements for community councils are not as onerous as they are for principal councils, because we have to broadcast our meetings live as well.
Yeah.
So that itself causes technical issues for us. With you, community councillors, I mean, in a sense, they could dial in on their mobile phone as long as they could be heard. See that they're not saying you have to run Zoom meetings or Teams meetings or anything. All they're saying is if some community councils have difficulty in getting to the church hall by 6 o'clock on a Tuesday evening or whenever, there's going to be some other way of them participating. And the rules of community councils just say they've got to hear and be heard. So, you know, it may well be that if you've got a telephone line there, you can put, and you can put it on speakerphone. That would suffice. Members of the public, coming back to Mandy's point, the reasonable participation in meetings could be they've got to come in to the face-to-face meeting. So again, when the guidance comes out, have a look at that carefully. But I don't think it's saying to you all, you've got to get, your broadband sorted and you've got to have this, costly technology to make sure that you can hold Zoom meetings and everyone can dial in if they want to. So it's not quite as onerous as that, but there's got to be some mechanism for the public to be able to participate. Sorry, Nathan.
Just a quick question. With regards to remote meetings, when the pandemic's over, is remote meetings or combined physical and remote meetings likely to continue?
Yes, in a word, because the legislation requires that. Like I said, it's slightly different for principal councils. We've got more onerous duties. But yes, effectively it will, but in a different way. At the moment, it's all about keeping people safe. So take Newport Council, for example. At the moment, still, all of our committee and council meetings are held remotely. So every single member dials in remotely. It's not without its difficulties, as Yvonne will tell you, but that's how it works. And the government brought in temporary regulations to allow that to happen.
Yeah.
So under the COVID, the Coronavirus Act, they brought in temporary regulations. Now, there's a major problem in England because they haven't got this Welsh piece of legislation, and their emergency powers for remote meetings ended in May. Because they only had 12 months power to bring in these emergency measures. So there's a massive issue going on in England. There was a judicial review case brought in the High Court challenging the government because they don't want to go back and change the primary legislation. But in England, they've got real problems at the moment with remote meetings. Now, thankfully, even though the regulations in Wales expired in May, this piece of legislation was enforced by then, which continues the legality of remote meetings in Wales. So at the moment, everything is perfectly lawful for Newport and for all the community councils to continue to hold remote meetings. Now, what the legislation provides, though, is that in future, members should be given a choice. It's what we call hybrid meetings or multi-venue meetings. But again, if you take Newport City Council, for example, we've got to have facilities whereby if all 50 members want it, or 51 members from May, come into the council chamber and want to have a face-to-face meeting and can do because there's no social distancing anymore, they can do that. And we've got to have a broadcasting system in the council chamber that would allow that to happen. But we've also got to be prepared for any number of those members saying, I can't get to the council chamber, so I want to dial in remotely as well. So we're developing technology at the moment that links those two systems together. So for those who are dialing in, we'll have this team structure, but we'll also have screens in the council chamber and cameras, so that collectively the people who are in that room can be seen and heard. And that of itself is problematic. So we're busily developing that technology, and it's going to cost a significant amount of money to install that in the council chamber and the meeting rooms between now and next May. But that's largely because we've got to broadcast our meetings, you know, and like you said, community councils are not subject to that requirement, and therefore you've got more flexibility about firstly requiring people to come in, members of the public to come into the meeting, and for councillors who want to participate, they have just got to be heard. So like I said, it could even be a speakerphone for them. So, you know, again, you need to think about what your arrangements are between now and next May.
Right.
Okay.
Gareth, I think if you look at the legislation that was published last week, the number of people that can meet, it says community centres can open, and yet further on it says no more than 6 people can meet indoors. This is where the community council meetings come into being there?
Well, no, this is purely in terms of COVID restrictions. I mean, it's up to community councils, you know, whether you think you can meet safely, socially distanced. The six people indoors is more the household bubble.
Right.
Now, I think for events, organised events, which a community council meeting could be, you're talking about 15 to 30 people.
Yeah.
Depending upon what level you've got. But of course, it depends if you've got a big enough room. You know, you need to have a big enough room so that those number of people can maintain social distancing at all times.
Yeah. We held a council meeting trial a month ago in Graig Hall, which is very big. There were 15 of us, 2 meters apart. It was unanimous that we didn't want to continue that way because 90% of the people in attendance, because we had masks on, they couldn't hear the business going on. So everybody voted to go back to Zoom meetings. Which
makes sense, you know, and until all the restrictions, because yeah, you're quite right. I mean, you know, even if you can meet indoors, there's still the wearing of face coverings requirement. We found it with the Civic Centre. You know, the capacity for most rooms is very limited because it's not just the 2 meters, it's the circulation space and the pinch points getting in and out of the rooms.
Yeah.
So which is why we're not holding any face-to-face meetings still, even though we've got quite, you know, big rooms in the Civic Centre. It's because we can't be 100% sure that we can maintain that safety requirement. So that makes sense. But no, I think technically you would be allowed to go up to sort of 15, 30 if they relax it even more, because that's an organised indoor event rather than a household bubble. But I you know, unless you've got a robust risk assessment that says physically you could do that safely, my recommendation would be not to go down that route and continue with remote meetings, which you're legally empowered to do.
Could I ask a question, Gareth?
Yes,
with regards to people meeting up, we've got 2 councillors which are anti-vaccination, which we think could cause a bit of a rift if we tried to hold a meeting or of any description. I just don't know where we stand. Do we tell them they can't attend if we decide to go into the hall, or do we say, you know, that they have to be remote? What happens if another councillor says, I'm not willing to go into the hall for someone that hasn't had the vaccination?
It's a common problem because there's no legal power of compulsion in terms of people having the vaccination. And of course, as community councils, they've got a legal right to attend the meetings. The safest course of action, I would say, would be to stick with remote meetings. Until you can all meet safely face to face. So I would still go down the all or nothing route personally. if they were, if by agreement they were prepared to dial in remotely, that's different.
Yeah.
But if they weren't and they felt they were being discriminated against, then yeah, the safer course of action would be for everyone to continue meeting remotely until it's safe to do so.
Okay, that's lovely. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Anything else on remote meetings before I go down my list? Can't see any hands raised. Right, the next thing is Community Council's annual reports. Have you picked that one up? There's a requirement for, or will be a requirement as from next April for community councils to produce an annual report. A bit like the council's improvement plan, saying what your priorities and achievements have been in the last 12 months. You've got to publish that that report. Not sure if guidance has come out yet from Welsh Government in terms of the form and content of those reports, but there is this requirement in terms of transparency for you to publish an annual report now about what you've been up to for the last 12 months, and you need to do that as soon as possible after the end of every financial year. So after the 31st of March every year, retrospectively, then you publish a report saying what the council had achieved in the last 12 months.
Oh, that's quite good, actually.
Well, it falls in line with the biodiversity one.
Yeah, and we do it as part of our budgeting. We usually highlight our priorities and what we're going to focus on. So I suppose we kind of already do part of it.
And I think most of you probably will in some shape or form. You know, in terms of publishing what you've done, and as you say, particularly if you're consulting on your budget or you're explaining what you've spent their precept on, then you'd want to do it anyway. But yeah, but unfortunately, it will be compulsory from next April, so it's not a matter of choice.
No.
Right.
Okay.
All right.
Yep.
And the final thing then from me, well, was you have to publish training plans as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your plans for training councillors and staff, clerks that is, or any other staff you might employ if you're in Rochester. But yeah, you've got to publish what your training priorities are for members and for clerks and staff. So that was the other thing that's got to be done. That's going to be done 3 months after every election, apparently, the training plan.
Yeah, we have done that. We have done one actually in our council.
Yeah. Is there any news on whether some of the courses are going to become compulsory? Because it would save a lot of grief if a core set of courses was compulsory. Yeah,
I think Welsh Government, they toyed with that idea, I think, when they were looking at the legislation, but I think they shied away from it at the end because they didn't want to go down the compulsion route. I think these training plans are sort of a softer way of getting there, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
That's not to say that community councils themselves couldn't resolve to make training compulsory. I know, the city council says that obviously councils have to have mandatory training before they can serve on planning committee or licensing committee. So you can have your own internal rules on that, but I don't think the Welsh Government wanted to make it compulsory and a sort of a qualification factor for councillors to undergo compulsory training. But yeah, I think these training plans are a way of sort of gently sort of focusing your attention on the need for proper training at community council level.
We just feel that things like the code of conduct, basic planning, basic finance, they should be those three, and law. So sorry, those four should be key to a councillor to understand what and what they can do within their job or within their role.
And I think you as a community council could take the view as part of your training plan that in terms of your values, you will make that, you will expect every community councillor to have undertaken some form of training. Now, obviously, training comes at a cost. Some training under the joint memorandum we've got. I mean, there's some things that we can help you with, but there may be other bespoke training you'll have to buy in from One Voice Wales or somewhere else.
There's a load of funding being put in by Welsh Government via One Voice Wales for training. I think we took 6 free courses last year. We've already did 2 free courses this year. We paid for some others. and the word is that's looking to continue. Again, they're aiming at the core courses. They are those 4 that we spoke about are the ones where they're aiming the funding at.
Oh, there's lots of courses out there. I mean, this training both at community council level and city council level is a big thing now in terms of the Welsh Government agenda. We're booking members on lots of free courses now organised by Welsh Local Government Association and so on. So I think, yeah, if your clerks are aware of what's going on out there, there's lots of courses that are being run that you can buy into at little or no cost.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, Nathan.
Yeah, I was going to add to what Brian was saying, but is it worth maybe having some sort of common training programme that all community councils could foster?
Well, I mean, that's up for, for all of you. It's difficult to say because obviously different councillors with different levels of experience will have different training needs. There are certain training that is compulsory. We touched on code of conduct training there. Just while you mention it, and you're aware of the fact there's a current review going on of the members' code of conduct. Yeah. Welsh Government have commissioned Richard Penn, who's a sort of retired local government official, works for the remuneration panel for Wales as well, and he's undertaking a review of the code of conduct and the whole ethical framework. So that will include the role of the ombudsman, adjudication panel, standards committees, and so on. Because the member code of conduct hasn't been substantially reviewed since about 2006. So between now and next May, we're expecting another piece of work there with an updated members code of conduct that will apply, well, not just for the city councils, but community councils would be expected to adopt as well. So I think that training on the code will certainly be compulsory. Now, we are planning a series of induction training sessions for our new intake of members come next May. And one of those compulsory training sessions will be on the code of conduct. So again, between now and then, we can discuss with community councils. If you've got new councillors or existing councillors who want refresher training on the new code of conduct that will apply from next May, that is something that we could arrange. It's consistent with what we're doing for the city councillors.
Yeah, because I had the code of conduct training back in 2017 with 2 other councillors from Grying. Oh, sorry. And I actually found it very useful. In fact, I've still got all the documents from that training in my bedroom. Which I do.
And a lot will have changed over that period anyway. But certainly, if they're gonna change the code itself, then I think updated training and new training becomes even more important. My guess is that they're not going to change much. I know they're going to add to some of the equalities duties in there and diversity duties, because again, that's high on the Welsh Government agenda. They may well look at the role of the ombudsman, particularly in terms of how complaints are dealt with. So, yeah, I think I don't imagine there'll be too many major changes in terms of the Nolan principles and what's in there, with general ethical standards and behaviours. They may tweak some of the rules on register of interests.
Yeah.
We know, for example, that they will remove the requirement at city council level for councillors to disclose their home addresses on the register of members' interest. As a matter of interest, we at Newport we actually redact that now on the register of members' interest, because members have to declare any property interest in Newport, which would include their own home address. Now, because of security reasons, we've taken the view that those personal details are all redacted from the published registers. So we've done that on a voluntary basis and because of security. But I think at national level now, and because of threats to politicians and other issues that have arisen, Welsh Government have said now across the board they wouldn't expect councillor addresses to be published anywhere, their home addresses anyway. So we know that the code and the register will change in that respect. So I'll keep you posted on that one as Richard Penn produces his interim reports, and any draft guidance and draft codes will let you know. I think that a few months back, Pam sent round a consultation document that the Ombudsman issued.
Yeah.
He was updating his guidance on the code of conduct, both for city councils and community councils. So I don't know if that was circulated to you, but those new guidance notes are enforced now. So he's already updated his guidance. They actually read much better because you actually look at them. There's a lot of practical examples there.
Yeah.
Real case examples of what's gone wrong in other councils and how you can learn from their experience. So I think it reads a lot better because there are far more practical examples about the pitfalls really of breaching the code. So that's probably worth a read if you want an update in terms of the code of conduct. But in terms of training, it's something that certainly we can look at. And I know a lot of this training now is being posted online. Certainly for new city councillors, a lot of the training modules will be posted online so they can undertake the training remotely if they want to. I think I've got mixed feelings about that. Well, I think it's good for members to do it in their own time, and in terms of digital training, I think it's good in that respect. With code of conduct training, I think we'd probably still like to do more of a face-to-face and a personal presentation, because I think that's easier sometimes to get the messages across. In a group session. Hopefully by then it won't be fully remote. It'll be at least partly face-to-face. But but if members wanted to go back afterwards, if they couldn't attend the training courses, I know there are various training modules online that they can log into. So a lot more on training. I think that was my list exhausted then in terms of things I wanted to draw to your attention.
Just one additional point. Obviously, all the councillors are going to have this training. Will there also be like adaptations for any councillors who might have additional needs, for example?
Well, yeah, I mean that would apply across the board in terms of any special adaptations or that's required. Yeah, that would apply. So yeah, we would just need to be told if there are any special requirements, and we would deal with that.
Yeah, okay.
As would the community councils if they are organising training, because clearly in terms of equalities, all councils have a duty to make sure that both members and members of the public are not disadvantaged in that way. So yeah, and I'm sure that's all in hand.
Okay.
Okay. Any further questions on Local Government Elections Act?
No.
We've exhausted that one, have we? Yeah. Look, if anything comes up and we can be of any help, let us know. If any guidance comes out on any of these annual reports, I'll make sure Pam circulates it to the clerks just to make sure it hasn't escaped your attention.
Fantastic.
Is that okay?
Yeah, great. Thanks.
Right, excellent. I mean, the rest of the agenda, I'm going to have to defer to Wentlow. Is anyone here from Wentlow Community Council? Because what is their request?
As I said at the start, we've been busier in lockdown than we have ever, I think. Spent more time on community council stuff than we ever have done. I'll let you do the litter picking, Brian.
Oh, thank you. Obviously, through lockdown, there's been a lot more litter picking groups springing up. Keep Wales Tidy are now active again. They did try and discourage litter pickings through the lockdowns because of the social distancing and the like, but it's now up and running. But it's raising a lot of questions. Now, I don't think these questions are going to be answered tonight. And it may be that at our next meeting, someone would come on to clarify some of the points that are raised. There have been issues with things like the bag collection after a litter pick, refusal to collect in certain areas. The one big question that's coming up, which would apply right across the levels, is rubbish that is taken out of a ditch, which is alongside the road. Now, the current standing is that is not Newport's issue, it is the landowner's issue. Now, I've been speaking to the local landowners, and I've also checked the situation with my land, and the ditch that runs between my land and the road, I only have responsibility to the midpoint, and the farmers have confirmed they have the same. So where the ditch runs along a highway, we need clarification whether Newport have the responsibility to deal with that area of the ditch. So if the litter pickers are picking up out of that ditch, is that collectible or not? You know, it's, as I say, I'm not expecting answers tonight, Gareth. These are some things that I think will need to be fed back at the next meeting.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully Pam in the background is making a note of all these issues about bag collection.
Yes, absolutely.
My only comment, and yeah, we'll go back to city services and get some answers for that. You know, if Pam gets some information, she can just circulate it to you and answer the questions. On the on the point about who's responsible for littering those gullies, waterways, whatever, it depends if it's part of the highway. I mean, it may not be part of your land, but if it's not part of the highway, I mean, it may well be it's NRW or somebody else's responsibility. Again, you know, Pam will send that query back to city services and try and get you some answers to these questions.
Yeah, because what we'd like to establish is a system of support. I sit on a lot of the waste panels now, and there's been a lot over the last 15 months. And I would just like to see more support for the local groups, because we are cleaning areas up significantly to where they were. And we do need the help of the authority with this, rather than saying, well, we can't do. If these groups that are growing and growing and growing, you know, I'm in the realms now of establishing 2 on the Wentworth levels, one either end. They need the help of the authority, not what can't be done, but what can be done. You know, we were lucky over the last year that a local waste management company actually did the collections for us as a goodwill gesture. Otherwise, we'd still have the 300-400 litter pick bags on the side of the road. And no exaggeration, Gareth, that's probably a conservative estimate. And that's the bags. And that's just the bags. That's not the loose stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and I do have a feeling deep in my gut that when we're doing this, we are helping the authority. You know, because if they had to send people out to do the amount of cleaning up that these groups are doing, it would cost thousands. Now, we're happy to do it because we live in these areas, but what we need is to establish some support rather than, you know, we can't do.
Did you want to come in, Kath, before I reply?
Yes, please. I totally support what Brian has said. I'm part of Marshfield Magpies litter pick group. Over the lockdown, we have had a tremendous amount of litter and fly tipping, especially in the greens. I agree with Brian on my boundary field. It's the middle of the ditch, and I have got in the ditch and pulled out probably 200 tyres by myself. And although one lot were taken away, we were told by Christine Thomas that she wouldn't take the other lot away because the landowner should have got the tyres out the ditch. But they were taken away, and then the third lot, one of the litter pickers actually used the app to send a message in, and they were cleared the next morning. So I agree with Brian. There's you know, as a community, we're working really, really hard to keep the area clean and tidy, and we work with the authority, reporting litter picking, fly tipping, doing everything we can, and we have had over this past year a real battle with NCC, certain officers, and like Brian, we're trying really hard to keep our community clean and tidy. And I know I've got friends in Cardiff and they can't believe the obstruction we have, you know, whereas they litter pick and straight away the local authority picks up whatever it is, will just pick it up. And we have felt almost that we're a nuisance, that the local authority doesn't want us litter picking because it's causing work for them, whereas really we are, like Brian says, saving a lot of money for the local authority. So the can-do attitude needs to be there. Totally agree.
I'm surprised by those comments because, as you say, we are actively encouraging litter picks and community involvement in these sort of, and it saves the council money. So it's not for me to reply to those complaints, but to me they seem very genuine, and all I can say is that the council actively supports this sort of activity at a community level, and really should not be doing anything to discourage it in any shape or form. So look, I think if it's that important a subject, rather than get any written answers to your question, what we could do is arrange either for Christine Thomas or Sylvia Gonzalez to actually sort of come to one of the next meetings, and then we can have a general discussion about litter picking.
That would be great.
Yeah. Yep. I totally support that.
Did you want to come in, Yvonne? I wasn't sure if you raised your hand there.
Yeah, please. I tried to. Don't know what happened. Yeah, I think I was talking to the Keep Wales Tidy chap today, and more provision has been made for swifter pickups on the weekends, not just having to wait until the Monday morning. But there also has been some talk about trying to coordinate the different litter picking groups across the city, just for sort of mutual support, I think, in some ways, which I certainly think would be a good idea. So yeah, if Christine or Sylvia can come to the next meeting, I would definitely be very interested in that.
I mean, clearly there's more of it going on now, and more groups are being established and set up. So I agree, if that could be coordinated in some way, that would make perfect sense. But yeah, it seems to be an important topic. So rather than me try and hazard a guess in terms of what may or may not have gone wrong, I think if we can invite Chris Thomas or Sylvia to one of the next meetings, then we can have a proper in-depth discussion then about the council's practices.
No problem.
Okay.
I can do that. Yeah, no problem at all.
Yeah. Could I also suggest that we try and involve Keep Wales Tidy in this at the same time? Because again, it brings it all together, doesn't it? Because they're the support for the groups. They supply us the equipment and the bags. The insurance is arranged for them, and they're promoting this as well. It might be great if they were just part of this meeting to put any input in if they had it.
Okay, I mean, if we can arrange that as well, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. Is there any particular contact you wish me to?
Yeah, I'll send you his details.
Oh, thank you. That'd be great. Thanks very much.
Yeah, we'll arrange that for the next meeting. I think next meeting is in September, so we'll try and fix something up by then.
Lovely.
I think there's a guy called Matthew Selwood who is the Newport Keep Wales Tidy coordinator.
Yeah, I'll send you in his email address.
Thank you, Councillor. Oh, thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. What's next on your list? Welsh Government grants.
Was that you?
No, it wasn't. It was you.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, it's knowing what grants are out there, Gareth. How, as a community council, we've looked at what grants are there, and I got involved with Gabo quite a lot over the lockdown period, and I now get notifications of a lot of grants, and there's grants for halls for certain things, there's grants for biodiversity, there's grants for loads of stuff, but I'm getting to hear about it, but are other councils getting to hear about it if they're not connected to Gavo
or other
or another agency?
Yeah.
So if there was a way of a communication route for grants that are available via community councils or village halls being published to us, that would be fantastic. Or
Kathy, yeah, sorry, Kathy, do you want to come in before I reply?
Yes, I was just agreeing with Brian that Marshfield do have notification of grants, and we on behalf of Magpies, we've been looking at grants to do pollinating gardens in the village, and just through my contacts with Living Levels, there are lots and lots of grants out there. And I know I think of the Newport Bulletin, sometimes they are advertised on there, but if there was a single sort of point or list that we could have through the community council, that would be very useful.
Yeah, or some guidance of where we could go to get information, and we can check it on a regular basis.
Gavin Jones.
Yeah, I know Gavin's got a lot of the stuff.
He's the best.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's difficult, right? For the council. I mean, we obviously, if we are aware of grants, then we can make you aware of it. And similarly, I mean, if we're administering the grants, if the funding comes through us, then clearly we'll sort of disseminate that information and encourage community councils to bid. But a lot of this funding is coming directly from Welsh Government through GAV and voluntary bodies, and it's bypassing the council.
Right.
So
okay.
we're not aware of it. You know, like I said, unless we're involved in some way, either in terms of administering grants, which is what we do with Regen and for other schemes, or sometimes with biodiversity in terms of sustainability and other grants that we get via city services. If we're not involved, then the information tends to bypass us as well.
Yeah.
So that would be the only thing. I mean, certainly I can assure you that if anything comes into the council that is remotely connected with community councils, then heads of service are told, you know, to send the information on, and they know that the governance team are the single point of contact for the clerks. So we will circulate to you every bit of information that we get.
Yeah.
But I know that you know, unless we are involved in administering those grant schemes, a lot of them bypass us completely.
Okay. And I was hoping to use the forum, because there's other community councils on here, just to recommend to councils that they do the lottery grant training, because there's so much money available through lottery grants, and the format in which the lottery grants take, which I was unaware of until early this year. And I would advise all councils to do the lottery training. You know, I was unaware that if you have fund matching, you can actually get that through the lottery via 2 grants. If you get 1 grant and they say it needs to be fund match, and you find another grant that will support it, they'll take that as the fund match. So, you know, it's worth doing the training. So
we've seen that with lottery schemes, that the match funding can be, you know, in a variety of different sources.
Yeah.
And with some of it, it can even be sort of time in lieu, or you know, staff time and so it doesn't have to be some sort of financial contribution. No. So there's lots of flexibility there in terms of match funding.
Yeah, that's me done on.
Any other question? Anybody else got anything to raise on grant funding?
I know that. Oh, sorry.
No, you carry on. I'll then Paul can come in next.
Right, sorry, Paul.
That's all right.
I know that through Welsh Government, there's a lot of money sloshing around for like rewilding and doing nature sort of things, because the road to nowhere is attracted hopefully quite a lot of money from Welsh Government after the rubbish has been cleared.
All I was going to say, Gareth, was that we had to do some work down at Rudering Community Centre, and we applied to the lottery, and the lotteries told us, because we were a community council, we were not entitled to apply for a lottery funding. So we had funding from the Welsh Development Agency instead. Sorry, Welsh Government instead.
Yeah, I think it depends what type of fund. Some of the funding isn't available to public bodies, only voluntary organisations. But I think there are other lottery funds that are available to community councils. So I think it's just, as Brian would say, being aware of what's out there and what's available.
Yeah. Well, I could give you a prime example of this. I actually have a lottery credit card in my back pocket to the value of £850, which was to run 2 tea parties for VE Day. Well, obviously that was postponed because of lockdown, but they've advised as long as we have a community event, those funds can be used for that community event. So, you know, and we stumbled across that by chance. It was part of their 25-year anniversary funding. It was one of the best kept secrets I've ever seen. As I say, and it was, you didn't even have to fill in a form. You put in your idea, a rough cost of what it was going to be, didn't even have to break it down, and they said yes or no. And I actually had the credit card before I had the letter that said yes.
That should be part of your compulsory training, is how to apply to all these grant funding applications.
So when's the party going to be, Brian?
August, we hope.
Right,
Socially distance, obviously.
We'll be down.
Right. What's next on the list? Community funds from third-party developers. Can anyone enlighten me on this one?
No, that wasn't us.
That's not ringing any bells with us.
Does it mean anything to anybody? Okay, cross it off the list then.
Okay.
Adverse possession of common land. Anybody?
Yeah, this is mine.
Oh,
Right. So many years ago, when we had the whole Marcher situation down here, we were told that actually you couldn't adversely possess common land. And I think we were, well, in a recent conversation regarding certain issues that we have with the common here, in particular enclosure of the common, encroachment on the common, and one possessionary title claim of the common, it transpires that actually you can adversely possess common land. So that's completely different to what we had understood for many, many years. So it makes, I think there are different rules depending on whether the common land is owned or not. But it has kind of spurred us on to address these issues that we've got, particularly regarding enclosure, maybe not so much encroachment, but definitely enclosure. So, I mean, it's something that we've dealt with through legal over the years, Gareth, because of the different issues that we've had. But I now believe from Joanne that it's been passed to city services, and it's now kind of in their domain. But we're not really getting any. We're not really getting any responses or any help. So I just wondered whether you could confirm that this new information that we have is correct, that actually you can adversely possess common land, and if there was any way that we could drive forward some of these issues that we have with the common. Because now, if that's right, if you can have adverse possession, as I say, we definitely need to address these enclosures because otherwise we could lose that space.
Right, on the adverse possession point, I think it would be very exceptional if you could claim adverse possession in a possessory title of a common, because to claim possessory title, you've got to exclude all others. You've got to be almost an exclusive occupation of the land. So I think it would be highly unusual to do it. Probably not legally impossible, because someone can actually own a common.
Yeah.
Some of the commons are not owned, certainly not owned by Newport City Council. And there have been issues about people trying to sell the common, as we know, into in terms of various sort of manorial rights that people claim.
Yeah.
But if it's a registered common, sort of ownership can't interfere with the rights of people to enjoy the common.
No.
And I think that's where city services come in. This is where Joanna's referred to city services. Those commons where they're registered common land and there's some sort of management scheme or rights under the Commons Act, city services will sort of manage the common, if you like.
Okay.
In terms of ensuring that whether it's the landowner, whether it's somebody who's trying to adversely possess the but anyone who does anything on the common that interferes with rights of people using it as a common is committing an offence. So I assume that's why Joanne Evans would have referred to the city services, because their sort of countryside team will be responsible for managing common land. But things like so ownership is almost irrelevant, like I said, in terms of things like encroachment or excluding members of the, because clearly you can't do that with common land. The whole idea of common land is it's available for common use.
Yeah, that was our, that's our understanding.
Yeah.
So we do also have issues when the common land when the common had no known ownership, everything was nice and clear. You have your deed of arrangement, your scheme of management, so you have your responsibilities as a local authority. Some of the common you have always kept, and some we kept. So that wasn't a problem until the common was sold. And then there was an owner, and that seemed to muddy the water, because there's it seems to me as though every time we have a problem, Newport City Council now need to get agreement of the owner to do certain things. So, and the current owner is it can be quite obstructive. So our common on our side of the village here is an absolute mess. It's got abandoned cars and it's completely overgrown, and we are desperate to get on there and tidy it up. But we can't, because we would be trespassing if we don't have his ownership. Now, as commoners, we are supposed to have the right, we are supposed to be able to use it, as you say, without obstruction. I'm a bit worried by that. Because we would love to get on there and tidy it.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense to me. I understand that if there's someone claiming ownership of the land itself, the council would need their permission to carry out any work.
Yeah.
If there was some major work to be done to the common, whether it's in relation to trees or roads or anything of that nature, that's different. But people have the right to walk over the common, and there's nothing to stop. As commoners, you would have the right to, remove things from the land that are, if it's litter. Absolutely, of course you can. I don't see what the issue is with that.
And if it's completely overgrown, we can go and
that's a bit different, isn't it? Because then you start to do works. When you start to do work on the common, that's when it becomes difficult, because that's where you do need probably the consent of the landowner.
Yeah.
Unless it was so overgrown that the council could just step in and remove it, because it was stopping people walking over the common.
Well, it is. It is doing that, and actually, it caused problems recently with the utilities because they refused to connect the broadband because they couldn't even get to the telegraph pole. But because it's an area of common that you have never kept, you're very reluctant to take it on, and I understand that. But we would be more than happy to do that and to maintain it.
Yeah, I think it's quite as easy as that, though. I think, again, that's why Joanna's referred to the city services. There are some where there's an existing scheme of management where we've got an obligation to manage the common.
Yeah, and you have that here.
Yeah, but you know, in which case there are certain rights that we could exercise, but in many cases it's not a duty. It's more of a discretion to undertake work.
Yes,
It's why it falls back on city services. It's not like, you know, public highways and so on where we've got a duty to maintain. This is more discretionary, so it probably comes down to priorities and budgets, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
But oh look, don't get me wrong. If someone claims ownership of a common, it's a complicating factor. But as I've said in other areas, just because somebody owns the land, they can't interfere with the rights of people using the common, and that's where it can't override, you know, the rights of the management scheme and people's rights under the Commons Act.
Yeah, but we can't use it because we can't get on it because it's
that doesn't seem right to me. Yeah.
No, I know.
If it's so bad that it's stopping you exercising those rights, then it does seem to me there's an issue there. But that's a practical problem rather than a legal problem, which is why, you know, it's probably been referred to city services. But I can take that up with Joanne, and she can sort of chase up city services for response for you. That's fine.
Oh, lovely. Thank you very much. I'm just going to be really cheeky now. I don't think
I think Nathan and possibly Paul.
Oh, sorry.
Down, but Nathan first.
Okay.
Well, wasn't really much urgent, but you did say a bit earlier that people who are committing criminal offences, if they obstruct rights to common land. Do you know what sort of you know, legal action can be taken against people who do that?
They can be fined, but don't ask me what the fine is. The reality is that under management schemes, if there's some sort of encroachment or obstruction, the council will just go on there and remove it. I mean, that's the more direct action. Some of these management schemes might go back to hundreds of years. So the fine is probably about 10 shillings or something. So I think it's far more effective if the council goes in and takes direct action.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Paul, did you want to come in on that?
All I was going to ask was, Brian mentioned that there's vehicles rusty and everything on the common land. Do they know whose vehicles they are? Can anything be done to get the owners to remove them, or is it the landowners?
Yeah, Paul, they belong to the landowner, and the landowner would not give permission for anybody to go on the land or to clear the land. That's the kind of stalemate position we're in.
Then that is a problem, Julie. Sorry, I hadn't picked up that these abandoned vehicles, if they're on private land and
no, they're on common. It's on the common.
Yeah, okay, yeah, but it's still if with removal of abandoned vehicles, even if it's on the common, they would need the consent of the landowner to exercise their powers of removal. That's not actually under the Commons Management Act. That's under the Refuse Disposal Amenity provision in terms of dealing with abandoned vehicles. So that's why I think they're struggling there. It's not like, you know, going on and doing a bit of maintenance in terms of it being overgrown or removing a few tires. If you're talking about abandoned vehicles, they've got to tow those. They've got to put a 7-day notice on those and tow them away to Telford. So if the landowner unfortunately is opposed to their removal, there's not much we can do there. But again, city services need to look at it in the context of people using the common then.
Yeah, because it just seems to make a nonsense, you know, that you can't you can't drive over the common, which is why we got caught actually having to pay for access to our property. Yet the landowner can abandon 3 vehicles which aren't roadworthy, which are full of rubbish, and just leave those on the common. So again, we don't have the use of that common ground.
It seems unfair, and I agree with you, but I suppose legally people had the right to walk over the common. Non-owners had the right to walk over the common, not drive.
Yeah.
The owner's got the right to do anything over the common if he owns it, unless he stops public rights of access and people being able to exercise their common rights. So it's a slightly different scenario. I know it might seem unfair, but I suppose ownership of the land does give certain rights. But if it's unsightly vehicles and so on, then there may be something that the Green team can deal with. So Joanne's obviously referred it to them. I'll get them to chase them up for a reply.
Oh, great. And my cheeky little request was, I think I know the answer to this. I mean, the ownership of the common has caused so many problems. We would love a Newport City Council to take that common back into kind of their domain, but I guess Newport City Council isn't looking to take on any additional land. In fact, they're probably looking to dispose of land. But if we were to raise enough money to purchase the common, given that you've got the scheme of the deed of management or deed of arrangement scheme of management, could we pass that then over to you? Could we gift you the common?
Legally, yes. Yes, as long as city services were content to take ownership and responsibility that went with it.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, as you say, the council doesn't have the money to acquire the common, but if it was offered by way of a deed of gift, as long as there was enough money there to maintain it, then that's something that could be considered.
Perfect. Thank you.
Sorry, Martin, did you raise your hand there? I wasn't sure if you'd indicated.
Yeah, just briefly, going back to your point about the vehicles, you were talking about their removal. I don't know what the council's position is on this, but if it's a vehicle, it contains a large amount of hazardous substances, ranging from the car battery itself to the actual chemicals and the materials within it. So after a period of time, any disposed vehicle, would that not come under any environmental hazard risk?
Yes, if it became an environmental hazard or public health nuisance, then yes, that's a different bit of legislation. Then
but I thought I'd mention it.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, if it's just a wreck and unsightly, there are ways of removing that. If it got to the stage where it became a public health nuisance or a health hazard, then environmental health could serve an abatement notice on and it would be the owner of the common to remove it. But it would have to sort of get to the stage where it becomes a serious public health nuisance. I suppose the problem with the common is, and if people could give these vehicles a wide berth and still be walking over the common, it's a bit difficult to say it's a public health nuisance. But yeah, it's something they could look at if it got that bad.
The only reason I know that is because I had the misfortune to live in an area in Manchester many years back where car theft was quite common. And so as a result, one of the ways of getting rid of a vehicle was to say it's leaking, it's on fire. It's kind of that
and I suppose if it's on the public highway and the battery's leaking acid or so on, then it's easy to say, that's a health hazard because it's in the public domain. It depends where on the common and whether people are likely to whether it's a risk to people using the common. I think that would be the issue. But you're quite right. If it got to a hazardous condition, then we could look at that certainly.
Yeah, and the public health issue as well, because these cars and vans are full of rubbish. So and with the overgrowth as well, and we've had an infestation of rats. So we've had environmental health out as well because we were wondering if that was contributing because we've never had this problem before.
Yeah, look, if it's causing a public health nuisance, if it's a statutory nuisance, then they can put a notice on the owner. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, difficulties of proving that these vehicles are the cause of any rat problem or any public health nuisance. But no, you're all right. I mean, if these vehicles are linked to any public health nuisance, then there's a different way of approaching it. But just removing them because they're unsightly and abandoned, it's a bit more difficult if the owner is objecting.
Yeah.
But we can certainly look at that. There's a whole range of powers that we could use.
Super, lovely. Thank you very much.
Paul, did you want to come in?
Sorry, Gareth, no.
No, there's an old hand, is it? Okay.
Legacy hand.
The final one I've got then is local development plan and community councils. Anyone know anything about this? Or?
Yeah, that was one. I just wanted to give thanks to Lindsay Christian, who arranged a Teams call with us and gave us a really informative session on how community councils can assist in the LDP. I mean, we're starting to work on the LDP now, so there are certain bits of consultation that come out, and we just wanted a little bit of advice on what our role in this could be and what our responsibilities, and also because there were a few things that came up in planning. Where we could maybe influence the LDP and we weren't aware of. So the session that she gave us was hugely beneficial, and we just wanted to pass on our thanks, but also we thought it might be really useful if maybe she was to come to a meeting and maybe address the community councils. She certainly said that she was more than happy to do that if anybody wanted advice for any of the community councils to get in touch with her. But so that was the reason for putting it on, to make everybody aware and also to pass on our sincere thanks.
Yeah, no problem.
I must say, Gareth, compared to the presentation that Cardiff gave last week, it was absolutely brilliant, because Cardiff just raised a load of mist and fog in their LDP presentation.
Yeah, look, I know in the past that we've asked planning to come to this group where we've been through that consultation process, and yeah, now would be a good time, I think, to have a similar presentation as we're just about to embark on the review of the LDP. So if people think that's a good idea, yeah, we can arrange that, I'm sure. So Kath, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I just wanted to say who is Lindsay? What's her title?
She's a senior planning policy manager. Is that right?
Sounds right.
Yeah.
She's a planner to me.
Yeah. But she's on the planning policy side, isn't she?
She works with Matthew Sharp on planning policy as opposed to the determination of planning applications. But
and how did you get a presentation from her?
Yeah, so
we asked for some advice, and she said it would be really good if we could set up a meeting. So we did. We set up a Teams meeting, just Brian, myself, her, and one other lady from planning that I can't, her name escapes me. But yeah, and we just talked through the issues that we had, and she gave us a lot of guidance on how we can assist and influence the LDP. And she talked about
it was just the LDP you discussed, was it?
Yeah. Our questions were specifically around that, because we'd answered a consultation that was put out, and we were a little bit confused by some of the issues, and yeah, that's how it came about. But hugely beneficial.
Right.
Yeah, as Julie was saying, I mean, Lindsay is on planning policy. If you've got any questions about enforcement or planning applications or anything of that nature, that's a different part of the planning. The reason that probably it was an opportune moment to have that discussion was the fact that we're about to embark on the review of the current LDP.
Yeah.
If you're aware of that, I mean, obviously it's 6 years old now. At the last council meeting in May, we agreed to send off this what they call this delivery agreement to Welsh Government to start the review process on the LDP.
Yeah.
And the next stage then will be to go out and invite comments, applications on candidate sites for development. So there'll be a sort of a 2-month period then where people can come forward with suggestions, proposals in terms of new development sites for inclusion in the LDP. Following which there'll be a further round then of public consultation before we develop the draft revised plan. So, you know, as part of that process, community councils will be heavily involved in terms of the strategic planning review. So I think it would be a good time for Lindsay to come to this forum maybe and explain to you what the process is, what the timetable is, because it'll probably take about 2 or 3 years to complete the process. It probably won't be until 2024, I think, when the final plan might go through an inquiry and be adopted. But clearly you need to be involved at a very early stage of the process. So again, you know, at one of these future meetings, it might be helpful to arrange for either Lindsay or Matthew Sharp, her manager, to attend.
Yeah, very good.
Is that okay?
Yeah,
That's lovely.
perfect.
Right. Well, that gives us a couple of things then to put on the agenda for future meetings. Was there any other business that anyone wanted to raise?
I'll let Kath go first.
Kath first, then Brian. Go on. Kath?
Thanks, Brian. I think you've said enough tonight.
That was a bit harsh.
Right, you're used to me. With regards to you asking people to this forum, one particular issue, and you might know about it, Gareth, is the lack of information from enforcement on any illegal developments within the village. Well, I say illegal.
Unlawful.
Sorry,
Unlawful.
Yeah, unlawful. And we've had awful problems getting any information from the council. We have got a lady that deals with planning, but I get more information from a member of the public than I do from her. And it's got to a stage where on the council now, I think we've actually sent in a complaint because we're not getting any feedback. So I don't know whether that could be anybody from enforcement could come to this meeting as well to answer questions.
I'll tell you what, if you send Pam details of what information you've requested and who that's been sent to, then I can raise that with the head of service. I mean, if it's just inquiries that you've got down, obviously down in Marshfield, then it's it's probably not something of general interest that we need to bring to this meeting. However,
but I don't think we're the only council that has this problem. I think possibly Wentloog might have this issue as well.
Okay, I mean, if it's a common problem, we can talk about processes. But like I said, if you've got individual inquiries, you know, we'll happily act as a single point of contact for those. If you tell Pam, you know, what information you've asked for, who you've sent that to, and the fact you've not had a response, I can raise that with the head of service then, and we can escalate it and try and get you a response. Did you say you've complained anyway, though?
I think a fair few months ago. Yeah.
Okay. Who's that sent to, the complaint? Do you know?
I think we've had I can vaguely recollect we've had some response from Matthew, and I think it was decided to go to the Ombudsman because it wasn't sufficient. We're not sure where the problem lies.
There shouldn't be if you're only asking for information, then there shouldn't be a problem. If you email Pam and let her know what it is, what information you've been requesting and from whom.
Yeah.
Then you can follow that with, on your behalf, and we'll see if we can get that information.
Well, it's information from the enforcement officer, which is Neil Gunther.
Right. Okay. Again, if you tell Pam what information you want and you've asked for and about what, then I'll raise that with his manager and head of service.
Okay, thank you.
Is that okay? I mean, if it becomes a common issue about our processes for dealing with inquiries from community councils, we can have a further discussion at a future meeting about that.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Thank you. Yeah.
No problem. So Brian's got the last say then.
Yeah, I've been involved with a number of consultations and meetings well, the title of it is Hidden Carers, and it's those people that care for a family member or alike that are sort of flying underneath the radar. Now, some of the things that they've come up with is, which is all news to the myself and other carers I've spoken to. They weren't aware of it. Things like GPs have allocated carer officers, and they've informed us, so does every local authority. So I wondered whether Newport had a carers officer and who it was.
It'll be somebody in Children and Family Services. Pam can make inquiries with Sally Jenkins and Chris Humphrey as to who that person is, but almost certainly somebody in Social Services will be responsible for dealing with carers, both the official carers and, as you say, the hidden carers.
Yeah.
So there will almost certainly be support mechanisms and people in Social Services that will deal with those. So leave that with Pam, and we'll get you a contact detail.
Oh, that's great. It's just something I want to distribute because we've got such an aging population down here that the number of carers is growing as well.
Yeah, no, I think they'd welcome that. From my understanding of Social Services, getting that information out there, I think they'd welcome that. So if Pam can get that information from Social Services, and we'll send that on.
Yep.
Fantastic.
We'll make a note of that.
Yep.
Is that okay?
That's lovely.
Yeah.
Anyone wants to raise? Okay, well, we got a couple of things I think for the agenda next time. So I don't see any of you before then. Have a good summer holiday. I'll see you in September.
Lovely.
And you, and thanks for your time. Really
Thanks.
appreciate
Thank you
it.
very much, Karen.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Thanks, Pam. Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye.